here's a difficult question. If South Africans were so upset by the Marikana massacre, why do we still have a funding crisis at the Commission of Inquiry? Should South Africans be taking the issue into their own hands? Well, let's chat to social commentator now, Ashwin Desai. Prof, a very good morning to you. Thanks again for joining us. It seems as South Africans, we're very good at galvanizing support and funds for causes close to our hearts. I mean, we have the likes of Friends of Jackie Selebi, Friends of Jacob Zuma, very recently the Pipi Sekgoseki Foundation. But when it comes to the Marikana Commission of Inquiry, has the public outrage over the massacre translated adequately into action?
No, it hasn't. It was almost, sometimes we want to be in a sense of denial. Every time we watch what went on TV and look at the commemorations, we almost want to forget about it. It's almost like the apartheid regime. White people wanted to forget about what happened at Sharpeville as quickly as possible, that people were shot in the back, and it was a travesty. So there's a great sense of denial in our society. But further than that, there was a sense, though, that we would hear what really happened through the commission. Unfortunately, we were overly optimistic, because commissions by themselves find it very difficult to arrive at the truth because of the nature of the terms of reference, the form in which evidence is led, the fact that it becomes the preserve of experts and so forth.
Is it fair, though, to look to the masses, to expect South Africans to put their money where their collective mouth is and foot the bill for the legal costs?
You know, obviously this is a crisis. But, my feeling is if the state sets up a commission of inquiry, the state wants to get to the truth, the state sets up the terms of reference, the state appoints a former judge to lead a commission, then it's incumbent upon the state to provide the necessary funding in order to arrive at their truth. You can't set the rules of the game. You can't determine who should be the judges of a commission and then throw your hands up in the air and said, well, the funding of people who are indigent, it's got nothing to do with us. It's ironic. The Marikana miners went on strike in the first place because they said they were earning poverty wages. Now you tell them that we don't have money for them in order to arrive at the truth. It seemed that commissions are supposed to level the playing fields. The state must be involved in that. But in fact, you can see how non-level the playing fields are. And those who are poor can't get justice in these kinds of commissions unless we find a funding formula. The fact of the public getting involved is a stopgap measure. It can't be a way in which we think we can get to justice in the long term.
You have just mentioned it is in the interest of justice that the miners are represented in this Commission of Inquiry. But for the greater South Africa, why is this so important? What is in it for the public?
Well, this Marikana killings have galvanized world opinion and ordinary people also on the streets of South Africa, that if we're going to have people being shot in the streets while protesting in these kinds of numbers, we are returning to the old days of Sharpeville, the 1922 strike, white mine workers strike, that in fact the bullet will rule. And many of us don't want the bullet to rule, that we don't want strikes and mobilizations to end in bloodbaths. And this is a window into broader South African society. Where are we going to go with protests? And so for many of us, the commission then becomes a way to understand how mobilizations take place and what are the limits and possibilities of peaceful protests in South Africa.
Another question that arises in the absence of state funding is, where is business? I'd imagine that because this is such a sensitive issue, that business doesn't want to take sides and associate itself with any parties there, and the brand, can be associated and linked to the miners or perhaps the other group. But the question is, where is business, and do they have a role to play in funding the miners?
Well, I think, obviously, business supports business, that business by and large have kept complaining that wages are too high in South Africa, that we have a stringent labor market, that strikes are crippling the country. They have done very little navel gazing themselves about how they conduct negotiations, the kind of wages they pay, the kinds of way in which they recognize or don't recognize unions, the way they rely on old authoritarian practices in which to conduct their relations in the workplace. So there's no no ways, business is going to say, we actually want to help miners in order to expose what could be quite brutal tactics used by mine bosses at the commission. So this is the irony, and that's why people want to get the public involved and NGOs and so on, because these miners who agreed to enter a commission on its own terms of reference, are prepared to tell their stories, are now finding that they come up against a kind of gigantic a business grouping which has unlimited funds, and a state which can represent itself, and the police with seemingly unlimited funds. So, no wonder many South Africans are saying that we need a commission into commissions of inquiries. And this is starting to indicate that people are losing interest of as commissions as legitimate places in which you can get to the truth of something. And I think the state can't sit back and just say, we set up the commission, now you come there whether you can afford it or not. If the state wants to set up a commission, then it's incumbent upon the state to create the conditions for the truth to be arrived at.
We'll have to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for letting us pick your brain. Social commentator there,
Thank you.
Ashwin Desai.
News that moves. eNCA.com.